It was the second time that Alex had been murdered that week, and he shifted uncomfortably in his chair as the compliance officer's eyes threatened to bore through his synthetic skull. In the old days he would have been sweating, but the plastiskin surfaces of the new bodies he was using these days had no requirement to excrete fluids at all. The only reason that he was able to afford such top-of-the-range bodies was that his great-great-great-great-uncle had decided he had had enough. He had opted for euthanasia after 475 years on planet Earth and left a small fortune to his many descendants. Even Alex's small share of the inheritance had, however, been sufficient to allow him to afford to use the latest Samsung bioandroid bodies indefinitely, on a daily basis. He was also able to reduce his working week from 2 days to 1. The officer waved his hand over the table. A hologram movie appeared that showed Alex walking down one of the back alleys of the city of North England. Alex watched as he saw 2 men rush out of the shadows. One of them grabbed Alex's arms and pulled them behind his back, whilst the other brought out a curved blade from within his cloak, and slashed across Alex's stomach. Alex fell forward to his knees, as the man behind him released his arms, looked up towards the camera, and brought the scimitar down hard upon his neck, severing his head from his body in a single brutal blow. Alex could remember exactly how it had felt, and almost visibly winced. "You do agree," said the officer, "that this is you in the movie?" "Well, it certainly looks like me," said Alex, "but don't you think I would have remembered if that had happened?" "So you are saying that it was not you?" "I guess so." "Yes." The officer exhaled noisily and shook his head. There had been a spate of these suicide cases recently and he was fed up with them. By law they had to be investigated, but the Privacy Law of 2087 now meant that there was no way to know for certain whether the people in the streetcam movies were really the people that they were suspected to be. What was worse, everybody knew this. So the interview was a charade, and unless he could extract a confession, there would be no possibility of a prosecution. The hologram disappeared, dismissed by a rapid motion from the officer's fingers. He waved his hand again and another hologram appeared. The camera was more distant from the action this time, looking down upon the rooftop of an apartment building across which a man, who looked suspiciously like Alex, was being dragged by 2 other men dressed in black, whilst a third man followed closely behind. The 2 men dragged their victim to the edge of the rooftop and held him, precariously balancing and buffeted by the wind, whilst the third man punched him forcefully in the face several times, causing at least 1 tooth to come out of his mouth, and then in the stomach. As the victim doubled over, grunting with pain, the third man struck him with a powerful uppercut on the jaw. This coincided with the other 2 men releasing his arms. The victim screamed as he fell backwards, momentarily, and then inevitably, downwards as he plummeted almost 1 mile to the ground. "Ouch," said Alex. "You do know that self-inflicted harm is illegal. That there is evidence linking that sort of behavior to irreversible mental disorders," the officer said accusingly. Alex shifted again in his chair as the officer pulled up a chair on the opposite side of the table and sat down, backwards on the chair, but facing Alex. The 2 stared at each other, like 2 chess players over the board. Alex held his nerve and maintained eye contact until eventually the officer rose from his chair and told him that he could go. Later that evening, Alex returned to his pod on the 456th floor of Farage Tower, named after the politician who transformed what used to be called the United Kingdom in the 2020s. He closed his eyes and was barely conscious of the transition as he left the cellular structure inside the head of the bioandroid and returned to the communal network. He was quite used to the fact that he now had no senses, no sight, no sound, and no motor control functions, of course. Apart from that, he was still himself. He started to think about tomorrow and whether it was worth the risk of arranging another murder scenario. It had been fun and an experience that he would not have missed. It was difficult to find fun and interesting ways to fill each day. But with no external stimulation he quickly drifted out of consciousness, and into a deep cerebral sleep. Meanwhile, the nanobots swarmed all over the still and lifeless corpse of the bioandroid until it had been dissolved and drained, with a mild gurgling sound, out of the pod. The biological material would be recycled. In the morning, a new body would be waiting for Alex just as it had done, every day, for the last 350 years. It was a utopia, of sorts.